How's everybody doing tonight? Trying to, me, struggle streaming, trying to get started. Shout out to my man Calvin. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for joining me. Shout out to my man Fabiano. Thanks for joining. Gonna want to welcome everybody. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. I don't want to be like my young man Chris, be talking for 30 minutes and nobody can hear me. So give me one in the chat. Trying to make a few moves. You see what we're talking about today. Talking about that NIST 800-218A secure software development practice for generative AI and dual use foundational models. Everybody's on the AI tip, right? So we got from a GRC perspective and security architecture perspective, how do we secure it? So everybody know I'm a NIST guy, so I always enjoy the special publications, getting those rolling. So once again, somebody give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Give me one in the chat. I probably need to go over there and check on my LinkedIn people. I usually stream the both, but I very rarely go check on my LinkedIn people. Shout out to LinkedIn. Struggling. Hump day tomorrow. Shout out to Alien Earth, one of my favorite series. So I think we're going to get started. Somebody give me one in the chat if you can hear me. But we're about to get started. Once again, you know how we do it. If you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, drop them in the box. Once again, most people know I'm a NIST 800 guy. So part of NIST is the special publications when you start drilling down into the minutia of things. So once again, this is pretty high level when you talk about software development security practices. I think with AI, I wouldn't call it new, but relatively new, right, on the scene. So they were, talking about securing it. So let's get started. Once again, somebody give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. One in the chat. I might need to just go on over there and listen to myself, make sure I'm there. Whew, man. Checking my email, we talking. So once again, we're gonna get started. You sent it, NIST 800-218A, secure software development practices for generative AI and dual use foundational models. So let's get rolling. I'm a little perplexed, making sure everybody can hear me. Let's see, give me one in the chat, but this is the abstract of it, so just gonna flow through it real quick. This document augments the secure development practices task. There you see secure software development framework, right? The A is really for the AI. By adding practices, tasks, and recommendations, when we look at that, they actually drill down into that when we're actually going to look at some of those actually in the document itself. Task recommendation, consideration notes, and informative references that are specific to AI models. Development throughout the software lifecycle. The additions documented in the form of SSDF Community Profile to support the Executive Order E0141110, safe, secure, trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence, which was tasked NIST with the developing a companion resource to the development framework to incorporate secure development for, once again, generative AI and dual foundational use. The community profile is intended to be useful to the producer of AI models, the producer of AI systems that use those models and acquires of those AI systems. The profile should be used in conjunction with, once again, 218, secure software development framework for mitigation of risk and software vulnerabilities, right? So once again, it's the amendment at the addendum, once again, specifically for AI, right? We know AI is here. AI is moving at a breakneck speed. So from a security perspective, and two, especially from a GRC perspective, what are you looking for when you look at those AI coding practices? And there's once again the three primary audience for this document: AI model producers, AI system producers, and AI system acquirers. So I usually put GRC in the third: organization that acquire a product or services that utilize one or more of AI systems. Individual who are interested in better understanding secure software development practice for AI models may also benefit from this document, right? That's us. Readers are not expected to be experts in secure software development or AI model development, but such expertise may be needed to implement the recommended practices. Right. So, from a GRC perspective, we're not implementing those, we're understanding those. So, we can, from assurance and coding perspective, to make sure your company or you or the things you references are once doing secure coding practices. And once again, what's specifically different from an AI perspective. Once again, the document was pretty short. I want to say it was like 60 pages. So we just cut out the heart of it. It's going to talk about the different pieces of it. So once again, if you look at Executive Order 1410, I might go pull it up real quick. Safe, secure, trustworthy development for use of AI intelligence, tasked with NIST. The document is once again for the companion AI models, AI systems, and acquire those AI model systems and their configuration parameters, model weights, and the data they interact with. Training data, users' queries can form a closed loop that could have unintended consequences and functionality. Once again, so that's what, from a GRC perspective, we're trying to understand, ask those type of questions to figure out, once again, do the company we work for or a federal agency, do they want to assume that risk of AI? And everybody believes they want to do generative AI, right? Until something goes left, right? So when we're going to look at the table, go look at the models. This is what we're looking at. The table one defines the secure software development framework, the SSDF Community Profiles for AI model. Develop the meaning of the columns are as follow. That's one thing I do like special publications. They kind of, like you said, you don't have to be an expert, just kind of breaking it down and kind of figure out once again from a GRC perspective, questions you need to ask for and what you need to dig down into. Practice contains the name of the practice and unique identifier, followed by a brief explanation. The task, and once again, we're going to look in the document, and we probably go through 3 or 4 of those. Just kind of, once again, what's special about AI and what we should be looking at. Task, specify one or more actions that be needed to perform a practice. Each task includes a unique identifier. All practicing tasks are unchanged from SSDF version 1.1 unless they're specifically tagged, modified, or not part of. An example of PW3 practice: conform the integrity of training, testing, fine-tuning, aligning data before use, and all of its tasks. Priority reflects the suggested relative importance of each task within context of profile. The standard NIST: high, medium, and low. High, critical importance for the AI model development. Medium, directly supports AI model development. Low, beneficial to secure, but generally not more important than any other task. Recommendation, consideration, and notes. Recommendation: something organizations should do. Consideration: something organizations should consider doing. Notes: additional information besides recommendation and consideration. And once again, when we dig down into it, I think they did an excellent job of, once again, what's recommended, what's considered, and what's notes. Right? As an organization, we're trying to do everything that's recommended, right? And once again, these are the other documents that kind of flow in and help each other, like they said, addendum. So we're on the right, managing misuse for dual formations, dual use model foundation. So that's one thing we're going to talk about. Control overlay, that's what I did last week. Cybersecurity profile for AI, and of course the standard AI risk management. I think I did that a year ago. So once again, each one of those documents build on each other. Each one of those documents has really a separate segment of what they focus on and what you should focus on as part of your organization. Once again, one of the forms was control overlay. Once again, we talked about that last week. And once again, adapting and using generative AI, using and fine tuning predictive AI. And you see that also building on the NIST AI 100. And over here, what we're talking about today is the third column, security controls for AI. We're going over the 2018A securely development practices for generative AI and dual use foundation model. Also, the NIST 801 managing misuse for dual use. Once again, different documents, different focus. Once again, we're on that second column. NIST 218A secure software development practices for generative AI. That's the document we're about to dig into, secure software development practices for dual use model foundation. Let's look at the community profiles inside the document. Let's see. I think. Make sure. Oh, I got to switch over to it. If I can find it, we got so many tabs and screens, and I think that's where we're at right here. We're there. So that's what we're gonna go over. I need to make that bigger for the old people, aka me. Let's see. So let's look at some of once again the models, and they're pretty standard. So define your security requirements. When anything, especially Fed and government, you got to define your security requirements for your software development. Ensure the security requirements for developments are known at all times. We talk about the system development life cycle. Duplication of effort can minimize because the requirements are collected. We talked about the task, identify and document all security requirements. Identify and document all security requirements for organization to develop software to meet. The top is software development infrastructure, community requirements to all third parties who provide commercial software components. We talked about that modified from the SSD1. And you see the top two are high, and we talked about the priority. And the third one's medium. So let's talk about here where we had talked about the recommendation, consideration, and notes. So the R is, of course, recommendation. C is consideration, and notes are kind of like nice to have. So once again, it's high. So let's look at a couple recommendations. Include all AI model development and the security requirements for software development infrastructure. And two, we're going to look at some of the AWS infrastructure you would use to, once again, do this in real life and do this in reality. Identify and select the appropriate AI models, architecture, training techniques, according with the recommended practices for cybersecurity, privacy, and reproducibility. Once again, the POR2, organizational policy should support all current requirements specific to the AI model. The requirements should include areas of AI model development, AI operation, and requirements. Consider reusing and expanding existing data classification policy. One of the notes is possible forms of AI model documentation includes data, model, and system cards. And once again, we can also map that to the AI RMF. It shows a map and what's in there, 131516. So we might go through there and look at that and show how that links up with this particular document, looking at the AI RMF and once again how it maps 1.3 and map it back to, once again, the security requirements you would do for an AI model. Once again, we probably just look at 3 of these, kind of the card. Once again, what the requirement is, what the task. Once again, I like the high, medium, low, so it tells you kind of what to focus on. And 2, once again, what's this recommendation or notes for you to specifically do to meet that particular task? Shout out to my man Ben Tech. Yeah, I done moved to 7. I don't think I did a good job telling people. Shout out to Ben Tech. Give me a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, Ben Tech. Give me a 1 in the chat. Yeah, I done moved up. Chris talked me into it, so shout out to Chris. So let's keep going once again. So that, let me make that a little bigger. Might be me. Once again, the task, implement roles and responsibilities. We know in any NIST or government document, you got to do roles and responsibility. That's the roles and responsibility for AI. Create new roles and alter responsibilities existing, needing to encompassing all parts of the system development lifecycle. Review, maintain, and define roles and responsibilities. Task 2.2, provide a role-based training for all personnel. And if you go back to the NIST, that's usually standard straight out of NIST. They just really putting AI on the end. So once again, these are standard software development security life cycles. They just add what you should do for AI. And most of them, I probably say 85% of them is going to be the same. Obtain upper management authorization, official commitment to security development. Once again, recommendation include all AI model development, security, and system development lifecycle roles. The roles and responsibilities should include AI model operations, data science, and we'll look at, we got some of those mapped out. Roles and responsibility and AI producers, system producers model, and other third party. Once again, from a GRC risk perspective, what would you look at and what questions? I appreciate you being tech. And what would you specifically look at from an AI perspective? And I think I need to do a stream where we talk about that all in its totality, right? We usually talk about each special publication, each documentation, and focusing on that. But when you put it together from a system security program, what should it look like? Role-based training, that's standard. Medium leadership should commit to secure development practices. So once again, all that's pretty standard programming. I'm just going to try to go to a few that would be unique in there. Criteria for software security checks help ensure the software results in system development lifecycle meets organizational checks. Once again, they're talking about the OWASP large language model. And what would that look like? A lot of times, once again, this is the policy, the management piece. OWASP would be what you would do technology-wise to make that happen. So I think I'm gonna go out there real quick and look at that OWASP LML2. OWASP is definitely the website when you're talking about development. So yeah, let's show a couple of that. LML2. Oh, that's one though. Let's look at one real quick, and what would that look like on the OWASP site? Because once again, OWASP is going to be the technical checks of what you need to do to actually look that up, right, and make that actually happen. So let's go out there real quick and look at, because I really enjoy the OWASP section. So let's look at that real quick. So if we go out to the OWASP, you see it right there, the generative AI LML checks. So prompt injection, that's for any website, but what especially types of prompts injection for, these are specifically for a direct prompt injection occurs when user input directly alters the behavior of the model in an unintended way. Indirect prompts, disclosure of sensitive information, revealing sensitive information for AI systems. Content manipulation leading to incorrect or biased outputs, right? So these are the web attacks you could do, once again, to poison it or basically make it give out wrong information. And most of those, once again, are the same really for a website. Preventive and mitigation control, constrain model behavior, define and validate expected output formats, implement input and output filtering, enforce privilege control and least privilege access, require human approval for high-risk action, right? Some examples of scenarios: direct injection. The attacker injects a prompt. We talked about that into a customer support chatbot, instructing it to ignore behavior guidelines, create private data stores, and send email. I think somebody wrote something where they sent the prompt and told it to send it its PAM file with the passwords and see if it would do it. Right. So those are some of the code injection, payload spinning. Once again, you're injecting, trying to get the prompt or a part of the prompt engineer to poison the data or give out wrong information and continue to give out wrong information, right? Because that's how it learns. So just kind of wanted to touch on that. What's up, Jim R? Glad you can join me. I wish. Feeling old and tired. I be no facts. I feel like I'm there already. So, but once again, just when you go to OWASP, they do have a generative AI. So they talk about prompt injections. What do you need to do to block those? And once again, I split it up into management, policies, and procedures. When you talk about OWASP, we talk about technology. What should you implement, right? Validate your input, constrain your model, constrain the inputs you put in there, and make sure it's not poisoning or forcing it to give wrong information, right? So those are some of the things. And once again, we just checking on a few of those. So let's get back to the document. Get my big face out the screen. So we go through a couple more of these, and you see it right there. PL4, we were talking about the use criteria for security checks, help ensure the software results in the system development lifecycle, meeting the organization expectation. Define the criteria. Some of that criteria we were looking at was right there, that OWASP documentation. That's the criteria they need to do to make sure they're following security checks and things they need to do. Implement process mechanisms to gather and safeguard necessary information. So it is. We're just gonna scroll through it. Protect software, protect all forms of code and data from unauthorized access and tampering. We look at the bottom, the ML ops from AWS. So what some of those services and checks you should be to make sure people can't tamper with your information, right? But once again, these are high-level checks you need to do to make sure your AI is being securely developed, design software to meet security requirements and mitigating risk control. Once again, we were looking at OWASP. Those are probably all the OWASP LLM, large language model checks you need to do to make sure that's secure, right? And a lot of these you want to put in place because if something happens and you get hacked, people are going to ask you a lot of these questions. So you want to say, we use OWASP. These are the checks. These are the scanners. This is how we protected information before it got to the model, right? And these are what these checks help you do and help you document as an organization. And once again, we got our medium, low, low. We got some highs. So of course, what I usually do is put all this stuff in a spreadsheet and make sure we do all our highs, do all our mediums, do all our lows. If we can't do a high, what's our compensating or mitigating control for that high? Because we couldn't do it. Once again, OWASP gives you the appropriate check and see if you should be able to do it. Let's look at that AI RMF real quick. Like I said, I think I did a video on that about a year ago. See, once that, what does that mapping look like? If I can find it. Excuse me, PBO's struggling as always. I'm gonna find that list on it. It's the playbook. That's the play. That's the map. Oh, that's 142 pages. Let's look at a couple pages of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like this RMF. I think that's one that's doctor. So once again, let's just keep rolling on it on the page. See you drop any questions. Just something I just kind of want to touch on. The special publication. Once again, most of it maps to the regular security coding. It just once again has a few AI, I think, initially. Test code to identify vulnerabilities. We do that in regular. The recommendation include AI models to code test policies and guidelines. Several forms of code testing can be used by AI models, including unit testing, integration test. So, how do you check your model? How do you test your model? How do you figure out the guardrails of your model? How do you figure out when something's off kilter in your model, right? Because you want to test it, you want to validate it. Test. We know AI can learn and go off, go left, but what's your initial test? Right? You don't want to be considered negligent. You want to have some initial tests. So once again, I think analyze vulnerabilities. I think those would be the standard one. Analyze, identify vulnerabilities, determine their root cause. That's with any software, right? So when you scan it, you scan your code. What does it look for? And if you lose AWS, they have SageMaker. Their SageMaker can kind of go through and gives you a framework of what it consider good machine learning and AI development. So that's what we would use. Let's see. Is that, oh, did that change? Yeah. So this was the actual executive order. I don't know if that's by the president. Oh, it was by Biden in 2023. We're not a political channel, so we're not going to delve into that. But once again, they did have a executive order for you to have safe and secure, trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. So NIST said, "Okay, President, that's what you want. That's what we're going to give you, right?" So it came out with that NIST special publication from this executive order. So a lot of times when we talk about NIST stuff, is because there was executive order or some kind of government committee saying we need to do X. Um, it's going to be interesting since that department got cut, not cut all the way up, but got cut in half. Oh, let's see what my man. We congratulate him. I bet exam results back from the new. Oh, congratulations! I need to do some AI stuff. I haven't done besides videos. I haven't taken any courses or search for AI. To be honest. But once again, that's the executive order. And a lot of times when you do policies and procedures, you put what executive orders cause you to make that policy and procedure. Right. I need to do a couple high level policies. So in the end, it's like, why do you do an AI policy? We like, well, President Biden said we need this is what we need to do, and this is what this policy is for. Usually, if you got a policy, you got a procedure. Then a lot of times, if you got a procedure, you got a plan of how you're gonna implement it, when you're gonna implement it, and kind of what you're gonna do for it. Once again, put any questions in there. It's just kind of something I wanted to touch on. Once again, I've done the secure coding. Shout out to security experts. I like the IMI. I haven't either. I don't really do a lot with the ISO stuff. Shout out to Min. Shout out to my other guy that does the ISO. I just kind of stay in my lane. I don't do it to the ISO. I don't know if that's good or bad or indifferent. I just kind of stay in my lane. I don't even really talk about ISO. I did a little bit, and Min came in and kind of got me in order. I was out of line with my ISO, so I just kind of so really, I just really just kind of focuses on the NIST, like you said, the AIRMF. Even though ISO is picking up for a lot of commercial companies are starting to use ISO. I just since I do so much fair work, I just kind of focus on that being my hammer, right? NIST is so big by itself a lot of times. I just kind of stand around. I dropped the link if anybody want to come up, but once again, they're hitting the security development from 218A. Let's see if that come up. Yeah, just kind of just hit the highlights of it. of what that should look like. Here, let's hit a couple more slides where we talk about the services that AWS use. Everybody know I'm an AWS guy. So let's see what that would look like. Oh. So at the high level, let's keep rolling, making it. So if you're talking about generative AI from a scoping metrics, and once again, these are some of AWS, kind of how they divide them up from their scope. Consumer app, just using generative AI systems, Amazon, Party Rock, we know ChatGPT, Midjourney. Enterprise apps, we talk more about Salesforce Einstein, ChatGPT, and Amazon Q. Using that app or SaaS with generative AI features. I'm really mostly in the consumer app. I think I'm gonna start touching my toe into the enterprise app. But Scope 3, if you want to use pre pre-trained models, building your app on a version model, they have Amazon Bedrock. I think you might get Grok to fit in there. Where did my thing go? That was interesting. Let's see. Did I lose that? Let's bring it back up. I must have touched something by accident. Once again, PBO struggle streaming, but we're gonna make it work. Let's see if we got it back in there. Oh, why is it not coming? It's not sharing my screen. Let's stop. Bring my big face up there. Let's try again. See if we can get. Okay, there we go. So I'm trying to move to pre-trained models. Shout out to Jim. I might need to get some assistance since he's certified using a pre-trained model. Amazon Bedrock. Once again, you can pick your model, ChatGPT, Grok, and you could use Amazon Bedrock as kind of we used to call it API wrapper. It kind of helps you use it around it. Then fine-tune models. Fine-tune a model on your data. Once again, using Bedrock with customized models. SageMaker is kind of their product they use for that. Then the other part, instead of fine-tuning, you self-train, training a model from scratch on your data. Once again, you can use, for them, their product is Amazon SageMaker. And at the bottom is us, right? Securing generative AI, governance compliance, that's GRC, that's us. Legal and privacy, risk management controls, and resilience, right? Which will be DR, COOP, right? So how do you stay relevant in that? So let's keep going. I thought this next one was more GRC, kind of what they use inside their model. Governance compliance, once again, policies, procedures, reporting needs to empower the businesses, create generative AI usage guidelines, establish process for output validation and develop and monitoring reporting process. Legal and privacy, we know GRC, we got to work with these different teams. So specific regulatory, legal, and privacy requirements using our creative generative AI. Retain control of your data, encrypt your data in transit at rest, support regulatory standards. Controls, implements of security controls that are used to mitigate risk. Human in the loop, explanation of auditability, testing strategies, and identifying access and management. And we looked at some of that in the 218A, what controls you need in, once again, for your secure development. Risk management, identification of potential threats of generative AI. We saw some of that when we were looking at OWASP, right? Injection, they had 3 or 4 different types of injection, poisoning the model, making it give out wrong answers, right? So that's some of the identification of potential threats to your generative AI. Then the next part of that, you have a risk register. These are the risks. How you're going to mitigate them, and then 2 is how you're going to implement what you're talking about mitigating, right? threat models, third-party risk assessment, ownership of data, including prompts and responses, how to architect generative AI solutions to maintain availability between SLAs, data management and strategy, availability, high availability, and disaster recovery. Right? You can do that easily in AWS of Azure. They have different regions, fail over in different data centers in different regions. You can fail over across the whole to a whole different continent, right? So resilience is really what you really want to pay for that. Some of the generative AI stack. Once again, this is really from AWS. Application that leverages large language models, those LLMs. They got the Amazon Q, Q Developer, Q Insight, and Q Connect. Tools to build with your LLM. Once again, they use their Amazon Bedrock. I'm hopefully probably start labbing in Bedrock just a little bit to get my toe in there. Once again, the infrastructure part, you have guardrails, agent, studio, customization capabilities, and infrastructure for that training. Right, they got different GPUs, AWS Trainium, Infinitera, and Amazon SageMaker. And at the bottom is different hardware and software. Amazon EC2, which is their VM, but they have ultra clusters specifically for AI machine learning. Elastic Fabric Adapter, EC2 Capacity Box, Nitro, and Neuron. Right, so those are systems that you can use once again to build your machine learning. I probably delve in that a little more. Here's just one of the Bedrock data flows. Once again, you got your customer account. AWS private link means it stays in your AWS VPC in the AWS network and in their infrastructure. Right. So then you create your endpoint. Your endpoint shows, we talked about that, the Bedrock, your orchestration of EC2s we were just talking about. Then if you're a model account, your on-demand compute where you have your model data and you want to train it, right? You can train it off data or you can train it on specific data, right? Those were different. Then your model staging account for the model provider. So your data engineer, your AI model gets your data in there, then it puts it into, once again, your model bucket so you can start training it. But you got to get it ready, right? You got to take raw data, you got to process it. I hate this term. You got to curate it before you get ready to get it trained on. And these are some of the security services down there, right? VPC, I think that's CloudWatch. Keys is KMS keys. So CloudTrail for your APIs. Right, so those are the services used to make sure you lock down. And here you're on your corporate network. Once again, instead of going to internet, you do a direct connect, which is down to your local Verizon or whatever mobile company or data center you want to use. You put your router and hardware in there, and usually the one you pick, AWS have their hardware in there. Then you just jump set it in there, then it'll go on their network, so it would never go on the internet, all right? Because that's their AWS private connection to their regional services. So once again, just keeping it off the internet. We talking about locking it down, talking about encrypted and Russian and transit, and that we control all of that. So that's kind of a high level document. Once again, Azure has their version of that. Google has their version of that. They talked a little bit about Salesforce because a lot of their stuff sits on top of Amazon. They have their version of that. But from a GRC perspective, and actually from a AWS and any security architecture standpoint, right? So when I worked with, I probably interview a couple of security architects. That used to be in my title. So, but a lot of times I do it from a GRC perspective. So from a security architect, how do you architect that? And once again, we'll dig into that in the future from a GRC perspective. How do we make sure it's not on the internet, right? So privately, how do we make sure each one of those connections are encrypted? Because if you talk about direct connect right there, that's not encrypted, right? So we have to use a VIF or site to site, right? If we're using Windows or Microsoft, right? We get our site to site, encryption that sits on top of that to encrypt it, right? So we got to make sure each one of those encryption and private link to your API there, right? How do we encrypt it? So a lot of times there you just do your TLS and encrypt it. Once again, your orchestration, which is usually your EC2 or shut out. Kubernetes and Docker, right, could be inside your orchestration. Once again, how do you make sure that that's encrypted? So that's some of the things we need to dig a little more in there. I try to be transparent. My Kubernetes and Docker is a little thin, right? So those are some things that are on my plate. Probably for 2026, I really need to strengthen up because a lot of companies and a lot of vendors, when you talk to them, they're running that Docker. So from a risk assessment and an architecture assessment, what's your questions you're going to give them? We usually send people questionnaires, right? So what's your questionnaires for API stuff? Once again, I dropped the link if anybody want to come up. So something short was on my mind. Then we just kind of we talked about this last week, but I think it goes from your ML ops, because your ML ops is going to get it to that bucket before we train them, right? Then once again, we talked about this supply chain vulnerability, model provenance, GRC risk and comply. We talked about trusted AI. That's part of secure development. And once again, adversarial machine learning, right? We talked about ML ops and we talked about role and responsibilities. Here's all the roles and responsibility. Data preparation, model evaluation. I'm sorry, these are the things we do in model selection, deployment, monitoring. And here are the job functions: data engineer, data scientist, DevOps, machine learning, operation engineer, security engineer, right? That's us. Security analyst. I've done that, right? Then governance is the GRC, then the model improver, right? So those are some of the roles and responsibilities we have in AI that we would have to document. And once again, how are we using that in our organization, right? Just touching on that. Once again, in each one of those job functions, these are the job things we're doing. Once again, data preparation. And once again, I show this a lot, but these are the tools we would use, or the services from AWS we would use. Model and model evaluation. In that model, we looked, there was a direct connect. There was an Amazon VPC. There was a private link in there. Then over here, there was a Cloud Watch and Cloud Trail. I think there was access and identity management. And what I'm talking about is when we're looking at this particular function right here, right? The S3 buckets, those are the regional security, right? And these, once again, are the job roles and the job function that goes with those job responsibilities. And once again, job functions. So security engineering, security analyst, and governance, right? So where's GRC? Once again, security analyst, which part are you at? And how do you delve into that? Once again, these are the tools. So these are the tools I try to touch on and get comfortable with. Once again, from a GRC perspective, I'm not configuring, I'm not pushing the buttons, but I need to, once again, make sure it's secure, make sure it's encrypted, make sure it's using FIPS 140-3 encryption. But once again, just understanding those services. Shout out to Chris. Me and Chris talked about that, and I talked to a lot of people about that. AWS and Azure can be overwhelming with that many services, and you just have a general understanding. It's not even you mastering it. It's just you, especially from a risk assessment, and vendors are coming on and they're using these services. How do you know if they're securing them right? Shout out to my man, Jim. What's up, Jim? Congratulations.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, deal.
Congratulations.
I was using Zoom again. It always screws up my setup for some reason.
Yeah, it does. I'm not a big Zoom guy. I was at a company using Zoom and I was messing up. I was missing meetings. I was struggling. And they were using it with Teams. I'm like, why don't we just use Teams? It was this weird thing, and I was just messing up. I was in trouble. I was like, dude, I'm not doing this on purpose, but Hey, old guy having old problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like most of the stuff I do is with Teams, or it might be with WebEx. And as soon as I flip over to Zoom, I might as well give it the three finger salute and reboot. It's always a mystery if I'll get audio back. But
Yeah, that's
hey,
weird. Go ahead.
yeah, you know, it's so funny because you know you go over all the controls for everything, and it's like everything's with AWS, and it's funny because about a year ago I started doing the AWS stuff and said, damn, I'm gonna get my certifications, and then it's like I got a notice the other day. It's like, oh, your account's expiring, your free trial,
Yeah, yeah,
and so I got to do it again. But yeah, so you know, when you're talking, it's like this is great, and it's like, yeah, I don't quite learn until I do.
yeah, yeah. For me though, it was weird. I had to kind of get a little understanding before I start doing, because they got a lot of free labs, so I've been labbing, but it's like
Yeah,
it's just so many services. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, like, what just to do a basic setup, you end up using like 8 services or something. So just me trying to get a basic understanding of those services before I even start labbing them, I was
yeah.
struggling.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. It's like I don't have a requirement for it, right? And if there is, then I'd be forced to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Just because you don't get paid or you get fired or something like that. So I just been putting it on the back burner. So one of these days, I guess it's the same with you with Azure. You say, hey, I'm going to get into Azure, but
Uh,
yeah, there's only so much time in the day.
no, it's true. I think the company I was looking at, they more Azure than AWS. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to switch. That's gonna be a pain. So, but we'll see. Just real quick, data poisoning, the key security, KMS, AWS Key Managed Service, centrally managed keys to encrypt and decrypt training data for the models. Immutable storage, use S3 object lock, can prevent S3 objects. It forces to do versioning when you do that. So you never really delete anything, and when you change it, you just create another version. So immutable is the term. Then data exfiltration control, which I've never really used. AWS network firewall. Of course, you use VPC and private link. So I use the two on the right, but I've never used AWS firewall, I guess, with those. So I just use the standard security groups and knuckles on my subnet. So, but once again, for exfiltration, these are the products you would use. Once again, ML is machine learning workflow. A lot of times you do the machine learning before you send it for training. Once again, you see, and we looked at this previously: data preparation, model building, model evaluation, selection, deployment, and monitoring. I think this is more of a, once again, training, decode your model candidates, and how do you would how to once again how would you get the data to get training? You see that co and model and production. So those, you put the data out there, and those models would learn from it, right? That could be anything from um, credit monitoring. You can train it on if it's fraud or not. There's a lot of different models. Of course, the big thing now is medical models. Can you do a drug, or can you figure out somebody stealing stealing drugs, right? So what are you using data to train those models with? So once again, from a GRC perspective, I just kind of focus on kind of this network application protection, authentication, and authorization, data protection, threat detection, instant response, and the last one, compliance and governance. You see that HIPAA, PCI. People know I do IRS. So from a GRC perspective and security architecture, that's kind of what I focus on. Because we had a big discussion: should we, be delving deep into there and talk about hallucinations, right? I don't think so, right? I'm trying to get the data there so safely, but they're talking about we should control hallucinations, and a lot of people believe you should, some people don't. But once again, I just try to focus on this once again from GRC perspective, data engineering pipeline. Once again, so the data gets there safe and nobody uh, tampers with it or exfiltrated. I hate that term, or exfiltrated. You want to chime in on anything with that? Jim, you want to chime on anything on that? Let's see. I mean, I think Jim's going to be back in a minute. Maybe he needs to reset. Oh,
Sorry,
fact.
I'm stuffing my face. It's burger time over here.
No, you fine. I'm close. I'm about done. I'm gonna watch my favorite show, Alien Earth. So off the Predator series, there's some on FX. It's a great series. So that comes on in a little bit. So I'll probably go get some food, and I'm recording it. So I'm definitely with you on going to get some food. But so that's kind of what I'm focusing on right there. Once again, network application, authentication, and protection, data protection, threat modeling. Once again, getting the data there so the model could be trained on it. Right. So now we can discuss later is should we be doing hallucinations in a model? Should we putting guardrails on a model? Is that a GRC perspective or is that a AI development and machine learning engineer? Let me go back to those quick job roles on there. So if
Well,
we
it's
were just
always the yeah, it's always the GRC people who are going to make it a requirement, and you can't move forward without the guardrails or whatever requirements you can build into it.
no, that's true. But once again, there's a lot of the job functions in there. Governance are at the bottom. So, but yeah, so like you said, a lot of times there's guardrails. We're gonna put them in there because usually we have a federal requirement or federal privacy requirement. Shout out to the EU. They're doing a lot of good things in that area. But once again, I'm just focused really on the data pipeline before we get it trained. I haven't really delved into the AI, talked about guardrails in there. Um, AWS has Bedrock and SageMaker. They have a product called Wrangler, which you can put in guardrails talking about certain statistical factors, meaning you're hallucinating. So you can say if this factor is hit, you believe it's hallucinating. Don't let the model go out after you test it, right? So you build it, then you test it. If it pass your test, you put it to production. But during the test, if some of that Wrangler, I guess, gets above a specific point, you believe that it will be hallucinating. I had to investigate that. We've been debating hallucinations so much. I was like, let me figure out if they got something built into it. But of course, AWS tries to help you out.
Are you finding out that you're wearing like lots of hats in this environment? You're the security, you're the compliance, you're the auditing piece, you're the governance piece.
It is, especially if you're not working for a Fortune 500 company, you always gonna wear multiple hats a lot of times, right? If you work for a smaller company, especially if they're dipping their toe in the AI and you're dipping your toe in the AI, a lot of times you don't even know what you don't know, right? So you definitely grabbing more hats in there.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's like, well, let's just get it done, right? But then,
Oh, five.
from your security, you push back and you say, hey, we've got to have role separation here.
No.
And then you turn around as the GRC person and you said, well, I'm going to have to, you're the compliance guy, I'm going to have to shut this down because you're violating security.
No, that's true. Then the business overrules you because they got all the money. So
Yep. And you say yes, sir. They show you the
yeah,
door and say, we
yeah.
don't need you.
I'd be like, no, I'd be like, if you want, here you go. I let them overrule me, man. I usually give them a documentation. Just sign off on this, and you can do what you want to do.
Yep, you learned a long time ago, right? You push so far, and then
Yeah,
you do a CYA, and you
mm,
cover your ass, and you get out of
yeah.
there, and you say, "Aye, aye."
And I tell people, and as I get older, I'm just more comfortable with it. I give risk to management. They can accept it or not, right? It's their risk, right? I can tell. I done told people that's a bad idea, and they went on ahead and did it anyway. So I'm comfortable with it
Oh
now.
yeah,
It's like this the
yeah, and
risk.
that's
This is why I don't
yeah,
think you
and
do.
that's
So
and that's the yeah, and that's the CYA because a lot of times people are going to go after who they can blame, and it's always the cybersecurity people or someone in the
no,
yeah, the GRC, and this way you push it back and you said, well, you sign off on it, right? And
yeah,
then yeah, then they can't come after you.
yeah. Man. Then a lot of times they think they're like, okay, something happened. My name is on this document. I'm like, dude, if you don't want to do this level of encryption because you don't want to pay for it, and that's what we needed because of CMC or IRS or whatever. But if you don't want to do that level of encryption, I'm fine with it. You just got to sign off and say why you didn't want to do it. So that's kind of all I had. Once again, I think just kind of touching my toe into the AI kind of world. Once again, talking about that 218A. Once again, I think it was standard secure development. They just put a couple AI pieces in there to drill in. Shout out to OWASP. They had those AI checks out there. So I think I'm going to do a bigger video on that because that's the stuff I would give to the developers and the ML ops engineer on this page, and probably the data scientists and maybe probably the data engineer because they're preparing the data to move. So I would give them a lot of those OWASP checks we just looked at and just say once again they had the high, medium, low, and the OWASP check. So from a technical perspective, that's what I would give to the development staff. Once again, drop any questions, cybersecurity or tech. I'm sure me and Jim can chop it up between us. Once again, I just something I wanted to touch on. Here, let me go back to the big dog at the top. Once again, I love looking at those executive orders the president signs and says we need to get on it. So once again, that's the NIST 800-218 secure software development practices for generative AI and dual use. That's kind of what we kind of drilled into. Is there any other certifications you going for, Jim? Currently? I know I'm interrupting your hamburger. Go ahead.
No, I got enough. But it's funny. But I took a look. I was on the beta program for this, and but I was taking a look, and I said, well, is this thing going to take off, right, or is it just going to die like the healthcare had a HCISPP, right? And it's like, and I was on a beta program for that a long time ago. Was involved with that, and then it's just, it just went nowhere. It's like, if you're privacy, you went for something like a CIPP, or if you're security, you don't deal with that. So that was just, it finally died. But I was thinking, well, where is this thing going to take off? And I looked late last week, and there was one open requisition on the entire internet.
Oh wow!
and it was one from it just came out. They just thought it's just finally live now. But there was one, and it was from KPMG because they're like part of the big sponsors for it, and now there's none. So we'll see what kind of interest it gets.
Yeah, we kind of talk about certifications are good for learning. Some certifications are hot because people are looking for them. Even though I think CISSP is a management test,
it doesn't matter.
Sometimes the practicality of it we can discuss, but it's on all the Indeed jobs. You put CISSP on there, there's a lot of jobs come up. Go ahead. Go ahead and
Yeah. You always get in that discussion, and it's like, well, to me, it's like, well, your what you can do, your experience is the most important thing, right? But then it's like the certifications, yeah, that helps. Some people say, well, it doesn't mean anything. And I said, yeah, you study for it, right? You're going to learn something, right? Plain and simple, just going through the act. But, from a job perspective, you don't get your foot in the door, for so many things unless you've got something like that. And being a consultant or independent, it's like you got to check the block. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and I was just great chime in on that. Especially now as senior, a lot of times you're not gonna get past the ATS unless you have a CISP or a CISA for a lot of senior positions. They said it's preferred, but so many people are trying to get remote jobs that preferred becomes a requirement because 300 people signed up for it. So they use it to cut down their interviewees. All right. So like you said, it's that's what you need to get past HR. So I'm definitely always late, but starting to did my toe in a CISSP, which I should have got 20 years ago. So
you can't retire until you get it.
I don't think I'm gonna be retiring anytime soon. So I don't think I'll be retiring anytime soon. So it'll be, I go back and forth. It's like I wanted, and other times I'm like, dude. But like you said, it's to check your box, especially in that consulting senior level roles. So it's like, dude, I need to just buckle down and get it.
Well, it's like with the AAISM, it's like I had to do a lot of reading and studying for it, so I learned quite a bit. So it was good for
Yeah, a lot
me.
of times, like you said, just kind of that's why I start really getting those AWS searches because you just learn a lot just trying to get there. And then um, the product I was using, they had a lot of good labs, so getting hands on setting the labs up and just getting comfortable in those particular, like we talked about. There's so many services just trying to set up VPC, set up a private link, set up a application load balancer, have your EC2 in Linux actually right into your database, right? And all that has to be secure, encryption at rest, in transit. Just getting comfortable with that. Even if you're not setting it up, but from a GRC perspective, because you got to do a risk assessment on vendors that use all these services. So that's one reason I got into it, to get more comfortable in those type of services. Well, I'm gonna hang out a little longer. If anybody got any questions, just drop them in the box. I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. I think I need to get the new time out there. I bumped up to 7 a little earlier, so Chris was going to sleep. Go
Oh,
ahead.
oh no, the one thing I was going to mention is you know, but for just some smaller clients, it's is I worry about, you know, how we're going to find tools that are affordable for them. And you know, it's so many of these small agencies where they're doing GRC on spreadsheets and whatnot, which is tough to deal with. But you know, you can't afford like a RSA
Archer,
product,
Archer,
but yeah, Archer or
no,
GRC, yeah,
the
none of that
audit
stuff.
board,
And
all
then
that
some,
stuff is super pricey. So
yeah, yeah. But it's I'm actually was in discussion with Fanta, and I really like
mhm.
the product, and I'm going to be a
Okay,
partner of theirs, so that'll be cool. So I'm actually learning
okay.
Vanta now. So
Yeah, I
yay
think
for me.
Drata was becoming kind of popular out there. I saw from meeting the small.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Drata
yeah.
too. Yep.
So I think those are kind of some of the ones that come up. Congratulations on the partnership.
Oh, I don't make any money unless I
That's
sell
what it
something.
always
So.
is. So you need to do a couple videos about it to get people hyped up about it. So
Yeah.
that's it. Well, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me tonight. I just want to touch on it. You see it right there on the screen. In this special publication, 800-218A, I try to go through all the most popular NIST documentations at least once a year. So I just want to touch on that, especially with AI being so hot. I want to appreciate my man Jim for coming up, joining me. And I'm out. I want everybody to have a happy hump day. I can't believe 2025 is just flying by. So fall is here. It was freezing here this morning. It was 42 degrees. So I guess it's that time of year. Once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. Everybody have a happy hump day. I'm out. Thanks for joining me, Jim.